We are now recording.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Tupper, President of the Board and District 3. This is the regular meeting for Jefferson County PUD number 1. It is August 4th, 2020, and it is 5 p.m. So, per the Governor's Extended Proclamation 2028, and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD will no longer be providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC. All meetings will only be accessible remotely via WebEx until we have further information on any more extensions by the Governor's office. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute at the appropriate times. And with that, I would ask for commissioners for introductions so we can determine a quorum.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner, District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have a full board tonight, so we have a quorum. With that, we will move to this item on the agenda is the review of the agenda itself. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda as presented?
I have none.
I have none.
So I would ask for a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So we have an agenda. Item number 3 is public comment. The public comment period is for any items not specifically listed on the current agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. The chair may place time limits on public comments to allow the meeting to be conducted in an efficient and orderly manner. We will do 3 minutes per person one time. If you could give your name, it would help. *6 if you're on a phone to get in and out. Public comment will be taken also during old and new business parts of the agenda. So with that, I will open. Will?
Well, Roger would like to speak. He also sent a very long email.
So, okay, well, we've got public comment open. Roger, do you want to speak or do you want us to read your written comments?
Roger?
Yeah, am I unmuted?
You're there. Go ahead.
So you have 3 minutes, Roger.
Just as soon Will reads it. I don't have it in front of me. I'm trying to download the agenda still.
Okay, so let's do that, Will. Go ahead. I'll start the clock when you begin.
Okay. Let's see. Electric sales and revenues are up 7% in the second quarter of this year compared with Q2 2019. I am curious to know what the financial effects of the pandemic are on our PUD. Would like to hear from Gene Wall's office on how collections are going or not. It would be most useful if that data were broken down into commercial and residential categories. We haven't had a report since February. It's important that the commissioners and the public are informed. In June, residential electric sales were up 9.2% over June 2019, but commercial sales are slipping. Commercial revenues were down 9.5%, and large commercial accounts fell 12%. Because residential sales continue to pick up the slack, electric revenues were up 1.5% in June. Without data on collections, those numbers only tell half of the story. 2 questions still outstanding. Who in the PUD is accountable for what information the public gets to see or doesn't get to see? And who in the PUD is protecting the public's right to know? As Tom Tierce reminds us, the people insist on remaining informed so that they may maintain control over the instruments they have created. Roger Risley.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Roger, for your comments. Anyone else who wants to comment?
Yeah, this is Tom Tierce.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, really quick. I was wondering what the status of CAB meetings is. Is there a plan to bring them back? Because it looks like we're going to be in this virtual meeting universe for some time. And I think the CAB has a few things that they might want to put on their agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Any further comments from the public?
You want me to respond to the cab?
I think it's worth talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, the chair of the cab and the cab members, before we kind of got involved with this virus, had decided that the next important step for the cab planning wise was to have a joint workshop with the board. And I think, based on that, the chair had decided maybe when we get to phase 4, then we would see if we couldn't put together a workshop and then get some priorities for the cab, and then they would start meeting again based on priorities that the board has given them to work on. That's kind of it.
Well, the question I have is why don't we consider start having them meet just like we meet remotely?
Well, I think there were some folks that were having trouble with bandwidth. And we were thinking that maybe some of those folks could get to a remote location somewhere and try it.
Yeah.
But the decision by the chair then was, well, let's get into phase 3, first to phase 4, and then we'll decide to meet. What they'd like to do is, before they have regular sessions again, is to get through a workshop with the board so they clearly understand now, since it's been a while, what the priorities of the board are concerning the cab.
Well, Don, I'm concerned that this is going to go on a long time, and I'm wondering if you could, find out what the logistic limitations are of what it would take to get everybody online with the remote meeting.
So do you think, so would you guys be acceptable to some kind of joint workshop then virtually if we could set it up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don, the decision to suspend the cab meetings until we could do that joint workshop was made at a time when our expectation was that we'd be back to relative normal much sooner. And now that several months have gone by, I think it's appropriate to move ahead as best we can with the virtual meeting of the Board of Commissioners and the Citizens Advisory Board.
I'll get together with the chair and vice chair and we'll see what we can do.
The cab chair reached out to me, and I thought about having this on the agenda, but we had a full agenda tonight. But since we're having the conversation, one of the concerns was the fact that they kind of wanted to have a joint meeting. And part of the reason for that was so the subcommittees and the cab would know, are there really things that they should and can be working on in this atmosphere? And it's obviously it's going to hamper them with this, and us and staff working under these conditions. So I guess having the meeting is one thing that Kevin needs to let us know if the staff has the ability and the bandwidth there to do a meeting of that type and get it on the agenda. Even if we have that meeting, we should come into that knowing what is it that we need or want the cab to be looking at. If there isn't anything, then maybe both things are moot. So again, I'll throw it back to Dawn and the chair of the cab maybe to do their due diligence to find out what the consensus of the cab is.
That sounds good.
So is that enough on the cab for the moment? I'm seeing heads nodding yes.
I'm just wondering if Kevin wants to respond at all. If you have any concerns, Kevin, from your end about supporting some sort of remote meeting starting for the cab again.
We have several scheduled meetings with no agenda at this time. I think we can work them in. It may not be, and this is where it gets a little dicey, it may be only 1 hour, but I do think it would be enough to get everybody going again. So we could definitely work in a meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so it sounds like Dawn and Kevin have some direction there. So with that, I'm going to go back to public comment, just make sure that we haven't overlooked someone who wants to comment. Maybe this generates another comment now from someone who hasn't yet spoken. So with that, is there any other public comment? Will, are you seeing anybody trying to do anything on your end? Okay,
No.
with that, I'll close public comment. And we have other points in the agenda that people can chime in if this is something that they want to get their 2 cents in on. So with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And items listed below have been distributed to the commissioners in advance for study and will be enacted by one motion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at a specific time at the request of any of the commissioners. So with that, are there any changes to the consent agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept as presented. Are you muted, Ken?
So muted. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Is accepted. So with that, we will move to item number 5, which is the manager and staff reports. This is for information only, not requiring any votes.
Kevin, you're muted.
You know, you'd think you'd learn after so many meetings, but so I'm going to change up a little bit here. We're going to start with Melanie. She's going to talk about some HR issues that she's been working on. Melanie, are you ready to go?
I am, yes. So no issues actually. Just a couple HR items to report. First off, I'm happy to report that we did hire a summer intern, which is something that we had talked about, I think 2 meetings ago. So we had our intern start with us this Monday. His name is Patrick Morton, and he is a student at Seattle University who's living here over the summer, and he's pursuing his bachelor's degree in computer science. So we're really happy to have him on board. He is helping me do some HR work this week, and then following this, he'll rotate departments, and that'll give him a good opportunity to learn a lot about the different aspects of what we do here at the PUD. So we've been very excited to bring him on board. Second item I wanted to touch on is where we're at with COVID safety. So with that being said, because it's been a few weeks since we've talked about that at the board meetings. With that being said, there aren't too many updates right now, no real big changes. About 3 weeks ago, we were going to have a good amount of staff return to the office on a rotating schedule. But we did see an uptick in cases in Jefferson County. So at that time, we decided, let's just scale back and let's keep the buildings really limited on how many people are in the buildings at any given time. So we still have a lot of our staff working from home and anticipating to have maybe 1 to 2 staff members come back in a couple of weeks on a rotating schedule, but we're still getting the office set up with technology equipment so that they can do both remote work and come into the office. A lot of our protocols are the same, is we're having people keep 6 feet of distance indoors and outdoors. We're requiring employees to wear masks indoors and outdoors if they cannot keep that 6 feet of distance. We've reconfigured some of our spaces so that we have more distance and space in the building. And we are having employees screen themselves for symptoms before they come to work. So before they enter the building, we're having them take their temperature and having them verify that they don't have a fever. And that's just another added precaution to minimize the potential spread. So we're still monitoring the situation for any changes. As you know, it changes rapidly. So we're still keeping a close eye on it. And that is my update, and I can answer any questions.
Any questions, Commission? It was a good report. I think we all kind of probably figured that was the case after the governor's come out with his proclamations of staying in stage 2. Kevin, I guess back to you.
Okay. Now we'll go to Mike Bailey. He'll do a budget update. You ready, Mike?
Yeah, I'm ready. So we've received everything back from the department. I've been working now trying to get it put together. before Thursday when Kevin and I are going to meet to go over everything. I did send Kevin the capital budget, what we're looking at there. We got to do some changes to that. We do have a meeting next Thursday or next Tuesday, excuse me, the 11th, that we'll do a workshop with the board to get your guys' input on where we're at. But I think it's coming along pretty good. I don't have any ideas where we're at yet because I haven't got everything put together, but we're getting there. So we'll have something ready by next Tuesday. That's really all I have as an update.
Thanks, Mike. Nothing from me, commissioners. They're okay. So back to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Mike. Scott, projects review. You there, Scott?
Is he *6? Is he on a phone or?
I'm not sure.
There.
Oh, sounds like we might be him.
I saw him listed. Yeah, he's showing on.
Yeah, it's showing him as a phone in, it looks like.
It says he's trying to talk too. We'll help him out.
Doing this. Everybody there? You can all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, a little muted, but we can hear you.
Speak up a little bit.
Okay. I'm doing a report on basically what we have for projects going on. And right now, tree trimming, I'll start out with that. Right now, Asplin Tree Expert was the lowest responsible bidder for the Coil Phase 3 project. That completion date is set for Friday, August 7th, this Friday. And when they're done with that, PUD has trimmed most all of the Coil Peninsula for this year. PUD will schedule Asplin to do time and materials for 2 weeks. That 2-week time and materials work will be to access areas that are not accessible during the wintertime, like rural fields where we've got taps going across and we're afraid of getting trucks stuck. It's dry enough out to go out there and trim where we need to. It is a catch-22. We have to be awfully careful because it's dry. We can drive out there, but it's also dry for fire hazard. So we do need to have extra precaution for that. Asplin Tree Expert was the lowest responsible bidder for our transmission line clearing, and that will begin approximately August 31st. The transmission clearing will go from Chimicum Community Center along Rhodey Drive to Anderson Lake Road. And then the trimmers will move over to Eagle Mount Rockeries along SR20 and trim to Anderson Lake Road there. So it's a pretty big area, but it needs it pretty bad. We also have Asplin they've got another bid for time and materials work. That's 520 hours. That'll be beginning October 5th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. During this project, they're just going to go around and they'll be doing a lot of tree removal. We have a lot of dead trees along our lines that need to get done, and it's perfect timing for them to come do it then, and also to have them in the area for storm if we need them. Having them in this between October and December is pretty vital to us because if we have a big storm coming, we need somebody to come take care of stuff. And now we'll swing into projects. Some updates on some of the ongoing stuff we have. The community solar. The PUD has submitted a grade permit to the city of Fort Townsend. We did not need a sign permit or a permit to build our fence for the solar, community solar project. PUD still needs to submit a street development plan for the sidewalk installation, and that should be done in the next, I would say the next 2 weeks. PUD plans to have a bid proposal complete by July 2021, and we'd like to have construction started May of 2022, unless, something comes up, like more COVID. The 210 Four Corners documents have been submitted to Jefferson County DCD to change the status of the 210 modular from temporary to permanent. Fees were sent They're just going to go through their process, and they said that should be pretty easy just to change that status. 300 Four Corners Road, the septic engineers completed the preliminary septic plan. PUD has approved the location and should have final plans complete on or around August 28th. Okay, on to Swansonville Road Phase 3. Scholl was the lowest responsible bidder for that project, and that will begin in August, the second week of August. We'll get letters out to everybody and a notification out that we're going to be working during that time period, so people can make arrangements to either get around it or get through it somehow. The Clay Street to Jefferson Street, Carl H. Johnson and Son Excavating was the lowest responsible bidder. And right now, we're awaiting the contract back from them, and this job is not yet scheduled. Center Road to BPA, Center Road PUD BPA line infringement, that's going to be happening the end of this month. That's a line infringement between the BPA lines, the 230-volt line, and our distribution lines. The Scholl portion of Elkins to Oak Bay, the primary extension, we should have that done and complete by November 11th of this year. That's what the goal is. Pinecrest to Bay Cliff extension, that is an extension of 400 feet that will allow PUD to loop the three-phase that we just installed along Pinecrest. We also have some work at Dana Roberts. We're going to rewire and change some knife blades to a GOAB switch. That's going to be taking place this year. We're also going to be doing a coil reclosure. We have that on a completion date of October 1st. And then future projects that need to be on the radar is the county is going to have to do some work on Cedar Avenue. They're going to be putting a sidewalk in there, installing a sidewalk. So we do need to do some work there, moving some electrical. City of Port Townsend will be doing Discovery Road in 2021. That's going to be spring of 2021. So we have to be moving in that direction to help out where we can there to get electrical facilities installed. Now, the state WashDOT has some projects coming up. The Swansonville Road project will be 2022. The Leland Creek will be 2022. Chimacum Creek 2022. And Shine Creek 2022. The Shine project does not affect us much. Chimacum Creek will, Leland Creek will a little bit, and Swansonville will a little bit. And the last I talked to WashDOT about Swansonville, they're talking about closing Beaver Valley Road down to through traffic altogether. And like I said, that'll be in 2022. And that's the end.
Thanks. That was a comprehensive report, Scott. Couple follow-ups. What about Hilda? Is that project completely done with getting through the creek, under the creek there?
Yes, sir. That is done.
And what about Kilsoot? What's are we completely done with Kilsoot?
I'm so happy to announce that we are completely done with Kilsoot Harbor.
The work is done, but maybe there's still more money to change hands, right?
Much more money to go out the door.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
so two other quick questions. One was on the Swansonville Phase 3. Are you looking at long outages there? Or are those going to just be short switchover type of things? What's that going to entail on the Swansonville 3?
The Swansonville will be dirt work bid from where we left off last year with Phase 2 up to the top of the hill where the riser pole is. And that is going to be intermittent traffic stops. There'll be flaggers there. It'll be just a slowed down process.
Okay. And then the last one I had was on the community solar, the costs that we're incurring there. Is that costs that get rolled into the per share when that project happens, or are those costs that we're taking on our own? What exactly happens there?
That's costs that will be rolled into the project, to the price cost per share.
Thanks, Scott. That's it from me. Anybody else? Okay, so Kevin, back to you. Do you have any more? Do you have a manager's report or?
I have one quick item that I would like to bring up. I hope by next next board meeting, we will be ready to at least start the conversation on an interlocal with Mason 3. And that would be, they are partnering with the PUD for dark fiber between Happy Valley and Olympia. Along with that, I would like to bring a letter for the board for Annette, the general manager of Mason 3, has been very supportive, done a lot of work for this particular project. It is going to benefit South County a lot. And so that should be coming within the next board meeting, if not the next one, the following board meeting. That project is moving forward rather quickly. So that's it.
Okay, anything else, commissioners?
Kevin, when that work is completed, does that mean that we'll have 2 routes for broadband to come onto the Jefferson County system?
Correct. When the project is completed, I'm going to, roundabout way, we will have a direct connection from 310 Four Corners through Discovery Bay, Quilcene, Brennan, Duckabush, Mason County, and into Olympia. It'll basically be a home run.
Anything else, commissioners? Seeing and hearing none and head shake, we will move on to item number 6, which is old business. For the old and new business section discussions, please hold public comment until each presentation is done, and we'll like to weigh in before we have to vote if we vote on anything. So with that, 6.1, PERM's coverage of alternative medicine.
Annette Johnson is going to take this one, and Annette, jump in. Hey, Annette.
Is she a *6 candidate, Will, or is she on a computer?
She's on the phone. I unmuted her.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So at our last meeting, we had brought before you a recommendation to go to alternative medicine with PERMs, because that's not something that we already have. And I was directed to find out more information, which is listed in the packet. I spoke with Dick Roderick at PERMs, and he provided me with all of this information that's on here. I thought it would be helpful to see what other PUDs did. He listed 2 that are close to us. He said most of the other PUDs have alternative medicine, just in different forms. So he just gave me an example of Clallam and of Mason 3. So what I have listed there, I listed under alternative medicine, I've listed exactly how Mason 3 has it at their PUD. And then Clallam and Mason 3 are at the bottom as far as how much was paid out. It depends on who uses it as to how much they pay out. So I'm hoping that with this information, if there's anything more I need to get, you just let me know. Well, I'm hoping that with this, that we can get this approved and have it on our PERMs plan.
Thanks, Annette. Well, I know we were all supportive of this concept and looking at this and moving this forward. Commissioners, any comments? I know Ken had questions last time around.
Yes. I'm looking at the proposal, and I don't have any problem covering a naturopath, an acupuncturist, massage therapist, certainly not a registered dietitian or certified nutritionist. I think they should all be covered. However, I do have a problem supporting a homeopath because the science simply doesn't support homeopathy. And I think it would be an error on our part to reimburse people for procedures that have no value other than arguably a placebo effect.
So I'd like to chime in. So Annette, is this language provided in other PUD policies that you're referencing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. What I'm referencing, especially that first part, the homeopath, naturopath, acupuncturist, massage, dietitian, and nutritionist, that's all what Mason 3 already has, and as well as Clallam. They both
Is anybody
have
still on?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm only getting Annette.
I was chiming in there. Can you hear me, Dan?
Dan, did you hear what I said?
Hello, is
earlier?
anybody still there? Am I the only one locked out?
We can hear you, Dan.
We can hear you.
Looks like Dan's connection is poor. He may
Okay.
not be able to hear things.
Hello?
So we have Annette, but not Dan.
You want to come here a second?
It's like he's trying some logistics. You want to take over for a few minutes, Ken, until he can get his connection going again? Maybe that's
frozen.
Yeah, I wonder if there are,
They can hear me. Kevin just texted me. I was going to text him, but well, I can't
Dan,
hear
can you
anybody,
hear
Kevin. So at this point, Ken might have to take the meeting.
Okay.
And if somebody could
Probably didn't hear me say okay. But, yes. So further discussion on the prospect of covering alternative medicine.
Yeah, so Ken, I was just going to weigh in. This is fun. Topic of, could somebody text?
I was having a lot of problems with my Verizon. It's being so slow. It says you have no internet.
Because I don't think they realize that they're on.
I know you do.
Or can you mute him, Will?
I'm trying to find out who
Don.
it is.
Okay. So I guess my
Okay. Yeah, we're trying to work on my end to getting back on here. I don't think at this point.
Okay.
We're hearing you, but you may not be hearing us yet. Jeff, why don't you go on with your comment, please?
Okay. My comment is that it's called alternative medicine, and I actually go to a nutritionist who uses homeopathy as part of her treatment of allergies and skin issues I'm having. So I would think that the homeopathy would be a pretty darn small portion of any treatment that anybody's getting. So I don't have objections to it because I don't think it would be a big aspect of it. And I'm looking at the total cost per employee of the whole program that the other utilities are doing, and it seems like it's a low cost to probably, and the homeopathy would probably be a minuscule, if anything, but it could be helpful, and it's something I'm pursuing actually too with some of my allergy and skin treatment to try and help. Anyway.
And another thing that might be helpful to know is that Dick told me that to be eligible for paying out any benefits, they would have to be licensed. So it couldn't be just somebody just going in to get anything willy-nilly. They have to go to a licensed person to get any treatment that they receive. So I don't know if that helps with your concern. But
Jeff, I hear what you're saying in terms of it being a very small item, and you know, I appreciate that consideration. I would also say if we're covering a nutritionist to begin with, it probably doesn't matter because that's no doubt not separately charged. The nutritionist is charging by his or her time, so it would be covered automatically. So I guess I have a problem with the standalone homeopathist, whatever. But I also recognize that if other PUDs are covering it and it really is a minor item, I'm not going to insist that it's not something I'm willing to go to the barricades on.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
And I guess the only other thing I wanted to say is Kevin was talking earlier in another meeting about how important morale is to staff and organizational and performance. And I think this is one of those morale issues too. So I'm supportive of that.
Yes, definitely, I agree.
Thanks, Annette.
So any more discussion? I think Dan's not with us yet, but still having a quorum of commissioners, we could vote on this.
Did you want to see if there's any public comment first?
Yes. Yes. Will, is anybody raising their hand?
Not that I can see.
Okay. And Annette, were we looking for a vote on a policy tonight?
Yes, in order for firms to accept the approval, they would need a motion from the board.
Okay, to direct staff to develop the policy, or what exactly are we looking for in terms of a motion?
Just approval of having alternative medicine as it's listed here that I gave you.
Okay, so the previous policy. I would make that motion to support an alternative medicine policy for our PERMS coverage.
And I guess I have to second that. All right, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Thank you for your work on this, Annette.
Thank you.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
So we're moving on to new business. The interlocal agreement with Jeffcom is item 7.1. Kevin, do you want to speak to this?
I'll start off the conversation. So I had a meeting with Jeffcom today. We have been helping Jeffcom with GIS services. They had to meet a very tight deadline. They did not have the GIS expertise to meet the deadline. So we have been helping them out. This interlocal was to kind of formalize that agreement, because moving forward, they would like to still have us help with GIS work. In my meeting today, there are a couple other services that Jeffcom would possibly want from us. So, for example, they do not have their own HR person. So one of the things they're kicking around is, does it make sense to maybe have access to our HR person for, phone calls, stuff like that, where they could really have the expertise of an HR without having to pay a full-time employee. So because of some of the discussions we had today with Jeffcom, we would like to actually pull this part back, the draft, and have Joel rework it for not only engineering services, but for some other services. We are also going to put in place where Jeffcom moving forward may be able to support the PUD in certain areas where it would make sense for us to have Jeffcom help us. And so we're going to try to write the agreement in such a way that says, okay, upon a written request, you'll pay our fees for engineering, HR, what have you. And then the reverse would be if they could do some after hours call response, stuff like that for us, we would have them do it. It would be written agreement that everything would be kind of a la carte. And this is one place where we have come so far with JeffCom and the fire chiefs, and that I give Don McDaniels a lot of credit here. He's worked really hard. So this is just one more step working with local government agencies, their customer or our customer, and if it works, if it makes sense to share some people, I think we ought to do it. So that's my spiel.
I want to ask Kevin, how many employees work for JeffCom?
He told me today, Ken, I want to say 17, but I could be off a couple.
Plus or minus, they're in flux with some of their employees.
And I would like to bring what Dan just said. They're in flux. This is a short-term, maybe long-term solution. I don't know, but right now there's a lot going on at JeffCom, and the reason that we've allowed them to use our GIS expert, Alex, is you just can't go out and hire one in a quick time fashion. They were going to miss some of the deadlines they had with the state. So at least that part worked out really well for the PUD. It gave Alex some experiences he wouldn't have gotten at the PUD. It allowed us to forge a stronger relationship with JeffCom. You know, it just was a win-win. So I see that moving forward, but again, not only on the engineering side. There is opportunity maybe to help them out in a couple other functions. And moving forward, they may be able to help us out in a couple areas. I would like Joel, he's gone back and forth. He's helped us with the interlocal. Joel?
I just pulled the form together. I had some correspondence with the director, Jeff Com, and Kevin and Samantha, and I think we can easily revise it to authorize, make it much broader, so that each task doesn't have to come back for commissioner approval. But that's up to you if you prefer it that way. We can do it that way, but it's really, really up to the commissioners how you want to proceed.
So, as I was, if we had talked about other things, you beat me to the punch, Kevin. HR was something I've heard them talk about in the past. They've asked around, so it's good to hear that we're talking with them about whether you have staff capacity to fill some of those other needs. So in item 3 under compensation, are we going to put forth a rate schedule so that front they know what legal fees are, what our GIS person makes, and that sort of thing, how we're going to charge them? Because it's a little bit vague to me, the terminology of what the compensation will actually look like. Are you hearing you?
No. Yes, we will. Can you hear me? We will have list of functions that and our costs, but again, the cost is going to be what it costs us for that employee, and that is spelled out in the agreement. If that employee costs us 75 and change, then that's what JeffCom has to agree for that person. So both sides would have to give some kind of listing, but it is based on costs. So the public, our customers wouldn't support the JeffCom, or JeffCom wouldn't support our customers. It'd be kept
Well,
very. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm thinking their board is going to want to maybe see what those costs are going to look like, and with through a rate schedule of per hour, or whatever, however you want to break that down, so that they'd have that information as they look their local as well. Because Ted's the interim director right now. It could be somebody else that's dealing with this a month or 2 months from now. So I think the more information we give them up front as a board, the better off they'll be.
If I can comment, conceptually, the idea of sharing services with JeffCom, I think is a very good idea. But in particular, I have concerns if they have 17 employees and we have 57 employees, somewhere around there. I have concerns about, we have one HR person, and my concern specifically is whether that would create potential situations of overload. I place a lot of value on our having a HR person who can devote her attention to our issues, and I'm not especially inclined to want to see that function diluted to a point which could potentially be to our detriment.
And before you go, I'd like to play off of Ken's point there a little bit. Is I think that you obviously you're the one who dictates staff time and capacity. So I think you would take that into account under an agreement like this. The one thing that concerned me on item number 2 under services was that the PUD shall provide. I think we should say may, and that takes care of this capacity issue. Just because they want it and we have this agreement doesn't mean we are compelled to do it.
Do we still have Melanie on the phone?
Yes, I am still on the line.
I was just curious, Melanie, what your experience has been in supporting organizations in terms of numbers of staff. If you think that that's within your capacity, again, not knowing, none of us know how much demand there would be. Ken has a really good point, but what's your experience in the size of staffs that you've seen supported by one person?
Yeah. So this role is my first role as an HR department of one. I have been in HR departments that have multiple staff members, and we have supported 3,000 employees or 150 employees. With that being said, we did have multiple people on the team. And my understanding is that JeffCom will sort of come up with a list of what they need help with in HR, and that will help us to determine if I do have the bandwidth to help with them. And I am willing to help. I'm happy to help if it goes through and gets approved.
Okay. Well, I guess my 2 cents are I have a lot of compassion for JeffCom, of an organization of 17 people trying to run it professionally and needing help on HR based on challenges that we went through of getting a good qualified HR person with much more resources than they have. So if we can help them, I'd like to. And I'm wondering if Dan's point that as long as we have capacity, we can do this. And Joel, maybe you could weigh in, or Kevin, if that would be within their understanding, within JeffCom's understanding of the agreement.
So many things have to flesh out for this to actually happen. When Ted was here, Melanie was part of the conversation, and they know how much we pay Melanie in her benefits, which is a lot more. It helps the county, or it helps JeffCom if they basically rent Melanie for when they need them. They do know that her primary job would be here, that she would have to have the bandwidth to do both, but there are many things in play moving forward. It may be, and I'm just throwing things out there. Maybe they could hire a coordinator, and Melanie, for her expertise, could supervise the coordinator. There's many options we have here. I think the interlocal is just the first step to say, okay, as a PUD, we're willing to work with you. We can do certain things, we can't do others. And like I say, with Alex, it did work out very well. So
I'll throw one more thing out there is, the 17, there's probably 10 or 12 of them are under contract, I believe that's the dispatchers. So they may have, the union stuff to take care of a lot of their HR as far as that end goes. They only have 4 or 5 administrative people, which maybe breaks out for them of where they need the help. That might be a question you might want to ask Ted or whoever, the director is when we get a little further down the way here, Kevin.
And then I had another question, if this is a first touch on this, or if you're asking for some direction, or what action are we looking for tonight if we are supportive of this?
if you're supportive, we understand the interlocal has to be rewritten to allow additional services, because originally it was for Alex, and we definitely need to formalize that part of it, because we are going to continue to let them use Alex, not like they were before, but in a more limited role. But so we have to finalize that, and that needs to be done sooner than later. But we do realize now after our meeting that it should be a little more encompassing. So I guess today we won. If it's a no, we need to know that. If it's a yes, we can redraft it and bring it back to the board as a interlocal agreement.
I'm in favor. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I'd like to see it redrafted. Kevin, I would be fully supportive of sharing Melanie with emergency services. If they had somebody who was at a lower level who could deal with routine things that require HR. It's the kind of thing that you cannot predict when there will be simultaneous crises. You simply cannot. And I saw Melanie smile when I said that, so she knows of what I speak. So I think we have to be very careful here. We had hours of discussion and a good deal of challenge to bring a qualified HR person on board. And when I started as commissioner, I was witness to what happens when you don't have that kind of expertise, and you wind up with lawsuits and people leaving who could be salvaged. So I very much appreciate our current situation, and I guess I'm willing to share, but I think we need to be careful as to what we are committing ourselves to, and I'd really like to see they're having somebody at a lesser level that Melanie can support, rather than her covering their whole employee base as well as ours.
So again, I'm in favor of helping anybody, within the county that we can work with and not putting ourselves at a detriment. And, emergency services and JeffCom, that's high on the priority list for me when it comes to the health and safety of all the people of the county. So I think the one word is in item number 2 under services is we just replace shall with may. I think that gives us a lot of leeway for us to be the masters of our own destiny under this agreement. Shall kind of means like you're going to do it. And it gives them the ability to say, no, you said you're going to do it. We need to retain the authority and the ability to say, no, if we can, we will.
So I guess I'm wondering, Kevin, if you have enough feedback from us that we're generally supportive, we have some questions and concerns. Do you have enough feedback that you feel like you can go back and continue to negotiate with JeffCom and then come back to us when you've got something more final?
I believe we can put together an interlocal based on this conversation that JeffCom will support. Because if we say, okay, JeffCom, you can have them as long as it's a secondary function, not the primary function. You know, ours is the primary. They will agree to that. And so I think we can draft it in such a way that our board approves it, and then it would go to their board, and it's on their shoulders. Okay, is that enough for them to move forward? So I think it should make sense and be approved by our board first, and then go to them.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
I'm good with that process.
Ken, are you okay with that too?
I am.
All right.
And I think we have enough feedback to put a revised draft together. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess at this point, Ken, I'll take back the reins till I'm not here anymore again. Is there any questions from any further staff questions on this item? So at this point, I guess we would ask any public comment, since this is old business and we allow public comment. Is there any comment from the public on this item? You see anything, Will? Okay, so then we will close old business and we will move on to new business under item 7.1. Oh, excuse me, we're already in new business. Sorry, I got to get up to speed here. 7.2, discussion on tax authority and reserves. Sorry about that.
I'll start here, but we'll also have Joel speak and Mike Bailey will speak. For many months now, there's been questions on very specifically the $5 million reserves showing up in the water side of the budget. We have spent a lot of time with staff. We've used a lot of Joel's time, and we've used a lot of Moss Adams' time to kind of put this in perspective and put it in such a way that the commission will be comfortable moving forward. So my part is a background on how the taxing authority was appropriated by past boards. Not saying that this board can't do things different, but in the past, the taxing authority was never intended to be used for water. And there's reasons that it can't be used for water. So past budgets, it was stated it would go to the electrical or the general or to broadband. What kind of brought up part of the issue is the state auditor requested we get rid of the general fund. And that was in 18 when the auditor requested that. There was $5 million of tax dollars in that general fund. And at the time it was moved directly into water and has sat there ever since. It was moved without the board's consent, I'll say, or to my knowledge, I don't think anyone really knew about it at the time, and it was put over there because it was general funds, and that's just how it was handled at the time. Fast forward to 2020, we know it can't be there, and it makes a difference when we move forward with required revenue and rates. If water has 5 million in it, then they don't have to raise their rates near as bad. If they have a very small portion of that in there, it really reflects on how we move forward with a lot of things. That's probably the driving emphasis right now is budgets, how we will set rates moving forward. This should have been addressed a while ago. We've just moved very cautiously here. We've had a lot of legal counsel. So I guess, Mike, do you want to talk a little bit and then we'll have Joel finish up with the case rulings and stuff?
Yeah, I can. So yeah, in 18, the decision was made to get rid of the general fund because the state auditors basically had been telling us that we needed to do it. I have reached out to Stacy Prada, the county treasurer, who is our treasurer also, about tax collections. Right now, their software does not break down the inside the city limits and outside of the city limits. She is checking with their software company provider to see if there's a report or an export that she can do, so we can do that. If we can do that, then we could use part of the tax revenues for water. If not, everything has to go to the electric. If it's billable, then we would have to pay for it, and at that time, it would be a decision whether it was worth the cost of doing it or not. But yeah, this is an ongoing thing that we've had many discussions on, and I agree with Kevin. We need to figure out what we need to do and move forward, and because it's going to affect the budget, it's going to affect rates, just affect a lot of things. So we're just looking. That's really kind of where we're at. So I'll let Joel kind of take the legal aspect of it now.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I mean, as we started this discussion, I didn't think it was a legal issue. And as it turns out, I think it's solely a legal issue. And the issue is that under the PUD statutes, we're not because the city of Port Townsend has its own water utility, we're not able to use property taxes derived from property owners in the city of Port Townsend for any duplicative water utility services, facilities, and the like. And as I think the commissioners know, there was a lawsuit that went all the way up to the Court of Appeals over Peterson Lake that the PUD was successful in fighting off because the PUD had won properly segregated out funds from the water division into a segregated fund, which was the general fund at the time. And the court found that the PUD was not spending tax revenues on duplicative services because Peterson Lake was essentially there for a reserve capacity, there was not there to provide water services to any customers. It's a pretty narrow ruling, really, I think. And you end up having to splice hairs pretty fine that we just need to be careful about how the PUD spends property tax funds. That's why I think Kevin and Mike are saying, well, gee, the easiest thing, unless we can track it, as Mike suggested, the easiest and legal approach is to move those funds out of the water department and not risk any commingling of them or use of those funds for duplicative utility services. And I agree with that. I think that's just a conservative approach. And how they got there, we could spend probably a whole other year. Mike could hire a forensic accountant and we might be able to figure it out after all that, but we're not required to do that. We're required to have a reasonable basis to determine what reserves we have, where they are. What we are prohibited from doing is spending property tax on duplicative utility services.
So there was a lot of case law there, touched on a little bit of it. So I guess my question is, moving forward with the $550,000 that we get in taxes, am I understanding that we can no longer use, until we hear from the county treasurer, we can no longer use any of those funds towards the water side? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that is what you're hearing, Dan.
Okay, so then the second question, and you touched on it a little bit here, is the money that's already over there, is there a way we can determine how much of that money could be used towards the water side as it moves out there as unrestricted funds?
No, unfortunately there is not, because there is not a breakdown of what was collected from those that live within the city of Fort Townsend and those that live outside of the city limits.
So, Kevin,
go ahead, Ken.
What does that leave in terms of reserves for water?
I'm going to tackle that one. And what it really means is, in an upcoming board meeting, maybe on the 18th, we will talk about how we're going to fund water. They will probably need a short-term loan from the electric side, which is all doable. We have to jump through some hoops, but we're saying we will have to address that issue. The first issue is, okay, we fixed the money issue. Now we will probably have to do a short-term loan to the water, and then moving forward, their rates are going to have to go up because of the projects we have to get done.
So what I'm hearing is that we need to get the money out of the water department because it shouldn't really have ever gone there in the first place. B, we have a decision to make as commissioners in our budget process about how this property tax money is used in our budget. What services, programs, costs do we feel it's appropriate to have that money covering, because everything else is being covered by rates. That's basically our two revenue sources. So I see that as a discussion beyond what we're doing here now, and it should be part of the budget process. So, and if you come back to the water side and you present to us, here's some needs that the water side has. Here's some investments that need to be made. These are investments that are going to last for 20 or 30 or more years. You do get into that situation, just like we've talked about before. Should current ratepayers 100% cover the cost of things like that, or should some debt be taken on by that division so that the costs are spread out over time, because of what's being invested in is something that will last a long time? And Kevin, you just said it, we can basically loan ourselves the money. We can have the electric side potentially loan the money to the water side. So I think these are all really good points of discussion, but I think, you got to get the money out of the water side. And then we have this budget discussion of where we're going as an organization in terms of the improvements that need to be made for each division, where the money comes from, whether it's from rates, whether it's from some borrowing to soften that rate impact over time, and what programs, services, et cetera, we think that property tax money should go to in our organization.
One thing, and this kind of a spoiler alert, in the 2021 budget, staff is going to recommend that the taxing authority dollars go to broadband. It's something countywide. It's a need today. So for 2021, there will be the ask there, just so everyone knows. That's what staff is going to talk about on the 11th, Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate and ask the question that some of the customers out there are going to ask. I'm not a customer, but if I were, I would say, well, why am I paying property taxes that aren't going to help, me on my PUD water or on the broadband side. If people who don't want broadband expansion or like what they have are going to say, well, why is my tax dollars going to that when I would rather go somewhere else? How are we going to deal with those questions when they come as to what are the answers to those? We should have some sort of a Q&A sheet or a fact sheet ready to say, here's why we are compelled to do something or not compelled. Here's what's in our purview through policy to decide. We should have that information, should be going on that before staff comes forward with any recommendations.
So at the budget hearing, we will recommend where dollars go and why. I will sit down with Will and Mike, and we will put some question and answers, FAQs, I don't know what you want to call them. We'll put some stuff together to answer your very questions. But I think if I'm a taxpayer in the county, it's not only if we only serve 5,000 people water. There's another 10,000 that don't get water that could benefit from the broadband. So a lot of good discussion has to happen. We've looked at this, and like I say, from staff's perspective on the 11th, it's going to be kind of a recommendation to use it for broadband. I do think electric and water should stand on their own. So throwing that out there.
So I think it's also incumbent on us to look at available low interest money, possibly from RUS, possibly from the state, to support the water side. I think Commissioner Randall's point is well taken, that the expenses to make capital improvements that are necessary on the water side should not just hit our current water customers. Up till this point, I have felt that borrowing money was something that we should do as a very last resort to support any of our lines of service. But given the current situation, I'm persuaded that it's entirely appropriate to look at available sources of loans and grants so that we can make necessary capital improvements. And of course, there will be rate adjustments so that the water utility is paying for itself apart from capital expenditures.
So any other comment from staff on this issue? So I guess moving forward, direction here, Joel, did you have any questions at this point, or?
No, I think ultimately, and this will be for Mike and Kevin to decide, but ultimately I think it will come before you either as part of the budget or a separate resolution to authorize moving those funds appropriately, right, Kevin? So correct. I don't know if Kevin's decided how that's going to look, but just as another preview.
At the last, hey Dan, just at the last meeting that Joel, Mike, and Olga and I had, we feel it's cleaner and for the public and everything that we would like a resolution so that, it's not myself, it's not Mike, it's not a commissioner, this is what we're doing, a resolution, it's above board, and that way we're all covered, or we're not doing anything that shouldn't be done.
Well, it also documents it for time. We know why we did it. It's an official action. We're talking about $5 million, and there's already one lawsuit in the hopper in the past. So I think that's the way to go.
And so, go ahead, Ken.
Thank you. I've got a question for Mike. So if the $5 million is moved over to the electric side, what are we looking at in terms of the unreserved cash on the electric side?
I'm gonna have, I don't have the financials pulled up in front of me here, Ken. Let me get that. I will get that to you tomorrow. I will update the cash summary for June with the changes, just so, and send it out to the commissioners so they can all see what it would look like between the two.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So Joel, are there any further, just kind of your crystal ball looking ahead from what you're hearing so far, are there any other legal issues that we will be looking at, like with the treasurer? I mean, as a treasurer, you think, depending on how she comes out with,
you know, as you just said, it'll depend what the treasurer, if the treasurer's actually going to be able to track where the payments are derived. If you can, then, you know, as long as the funds come from outside the city of Port Townsend, at least according to the case law, I think you can make a strong case that those funds can be spent on water improvement projects that are similar to those within the city of Port Townsend. So
I think that's an important component before we sign off on a resolution. I think that's something we really need to push forward with the treasurers, getting some clarification if that can happen.
Stacy does have a CR open with their software vendor. She's just waiting back to hear from that. As soon as she hears, she'll let me know as to whether it is something that they can do or can't do.
Because I think we need as much resolution towards helping the water side, you know, the water customers, as we can possibly come up with, you know, within the law and being creative. I think if that's an option we have, we should definitely look at that before we just say, you know, we're not going to give anything to the water side. We're moving everything out of there. So that's kind of my 2 cents before we get too far ahead with a resolution. Is I think we really should have the treasurer weigh in that, you know, we can or can't segregate where those tax funds are originating.
Moving forward, we have more option to know where they came from. In the past, it becomes a little iffier. We've talked about the possibility of just a very small amount going to water, so we know it's less, but even then it becomes problematic. It's just, we're being very conservative here. I know it is hard for the water side of things, but we are trying to follow, you know, state law.
Well, I think it comes back to the budget process question again of do the electrical side, which is, you know, electrical side not including broadband, and water side and sewer side, as commissioners, do we expect them to support themselves over the long term with rates, given that in the short term there might need to be some borrowing because of some past infrastructure that just hasn't gone in. So I think that the question that Dan's bringing up is partly a question that we need to address through the rate setting and the budget setting process this year.
Okay, so is there any other discussion on this, commissioners? It looks like everybody has what direction it to any public comment on this particular item, discussion of tax authority and reserves. You see anything on your end, Will? Okay, so with that, we will close discussion on that issue, and it concludes new business. We will move on to commissioner reports. Ken, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. So the 22nd of July, I attended the JBAT steering committee meeting. On the 27th, I had a conversation with our attorney. I attended our special board meeting on risk management on the 28th. On the 29th, I participated in the board meeting for Energy Northwest. In that meeting, their CEO gave a report and stated that they had broken additional records in production from the Columbia Generating Station. They've so far had 10 positive COVID cases among employees. The Tri-City areas, as you probably know, was particularly hard hit with the virus due to the fruit packing plants, which concentrated people together. Let's see. Usage of the Evita system, the charging stations across the state has been going up, but also affected by the COVID crisis. And let's see. I think that's all I want to say about Energy Northwest. August 3rd. Oh, I'm sorry. I did participate in the JBAT conference call with Russ Elliott on the phone. I thought he was very helpful, very encouraging. And he promises that there will be a breakthrough technology around the corner that will solve all of our broadband issues. But he didn't say what it was. August 3rd, I had a call with our general manager, participated in the executive session earlier today. Tomorrow and Thursday, I'll participate virtually in the Public Power Council meetings. I'm looking forward to our budget meeting on the 11th, and then on the 17th, I'll have another call with our general manager, and that's my report.
Okay, should I go next, Dan? I will proceed. Okay, so on July 23rd, attended North Olympic Development Council executive meeting and regular board meeting. We heard really interesting presentations by the Port of Port Townsend, the Port of Port Angeles, and the School of Wooden Boat Building on their projects, and just some highlights of that. The port appears to the Port of Port Townsend has finally finalized their plans for improvements at Point Hudson. They're going to replace both breakwaters. They've got a total estimated cost of $15 million, and they are seeking EDA grants, Economic Development Administration federal grants, to help assist with those costs. And the port has also indicated that they're planning for Point Hudson. They've realized the importance of the marine trades to our local Jefferson County economy, and what little land that's vacant in Point Hudson that remains, they want to devote to marine trade uses, which has been something that's been talked about for a long time. Then on the 28th, I attended the special PUD meeting regarding risk management. On the 29th, I was approached by some members of our community who were interested in the idea of the PUD somehow financing our customers who want to make energy improvements to their houses and apply them to their power bill. And I explained to these folks, there were some folks from Local 2020 and an old friend who moved back to town, Kellen Lynch, who got a degree in energy policy from Western, that actually we were considering something like that. We've been considering it for a while with Craft 3, the on-bill repayment program. So they participated in a phone call with Craft 3, a Zoom call with Craft 3 to get more background on the information. And I think they're going to be coming to Kevin and or a future PUD meeting to talk about their ideas of why they think that has value for the community. So that's just a heads up there. And then during this conversation, Kellen Lynch, who's now got a job working as a consultant for other utilities around the country on energy policy, mentioned that Orcus Power and Light has borrowed money from the USDA, which is 0% interest for 20 years, which kind of caught my attention, that they basically are using to develop their own energy efficiency program, which sounds like it's like an inside program that they're going to do for on-bill repayment as opposed to working with an outside nonprofit bank like Craft 3. But when I heard that there's USDA money, in the millions of dollar ranges for 0% interest for 20 years, that got my attention. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's actually 2% interest.
2%. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm happy to share I'm sure I'll get their approval. Happy to share what they have.
Okay. Well, that's when you get your information on the street, sometimes that happens. Let's see. And then on the 30th, we're part of this for government organization, the Intergovernmental Coordinating Group. And I'm the liaison to the Jobs and Economy Work Group. We had our first meeting last Thursday. Thank you, Will, for helping to get that technology all set up so we could have that meeting. It was a great meeting. We're going to meet again in 2 weeks from last Thursday, and we will have a draft report to provide to the full group when we meet on, I think it's August 23rd is our next meeting. So we got that group up and going and had a great participation. Let's see, I intend to participate in the PPC meetings happening later this week. I've got a meeting scheduled with Kevin on the 7th, and then I'll be at the 2 upcoming meetings that the PUD has, a special meeting on the 11th and the regular board meeting on the 18th, and that is my report.
Thanks, Jeff. So I met with Manager Street on the 22nd. On the 23rd of July, I listened in on the JeffCom meeting. I did not comment. Ted Krasinski from East Jefferson Fire and Rescue is the interim director. They've all gathered from our earlier conversations tonight. They're advertising for candidates for that director's position. So I don't know if Ted will stay there or if they'll find someone. They're going on a national search, it looks like, for that. They talked a little bit about the work that we're doing as a PUD to research through our architect to see if there's a way we can co-locate, or have JeffCom locate at the Four Corners site. They kind of thanked the PUD and Dawn for that work that's going on there. They also appreciated the help that Alex from our GIS tech has been doing with them. They're very appreciative of that because they retirement coming up again. That's part of their influx here. They have a retirement and they lost someone, so that's what generated a lot of the need for us to kind of help them with the GIS as they're moving forward. They also thanked us for the Wi-Fi hotspot out on the Coil Fire Station. I guess that must have went live, I'm assuming. So they thanked us for that work done out there. I attended the risk management policy special meeting on the 28th of July. Moss Adams did a great job on that. And later, the second half of that meeting was, our water engineer, Samantha Harper, gave a presentation systems and that we manage and own. So that was very helpful to hear that information. I think we still need some water information as well to complement that. As we look at how that process is going to be rolled out. Let's see, what else did I have? I attended the special executive session meeting today, and that was the extent of the things I've done so far since we last met. I plan on attending the PPC meetings on August 5th and 6th. I'll meet with the general manager on the 7th, and I will attend the special meeting on the 2021 budget on August 11th. So that's my short report. Any other further questions from staff, commissioners? Any one last chance for public input, I guess, at this point. I think we've been meetings on tonight, all things being equal. I know I missed part of it, kind of got behind the 8 ball there. Sorry for that. So I'll ask, is there any other public comment at this point? Are you seeing anything, Will?
Nope.
Okay, so with that, unless there's anything else for the good of the order, not seeing anything, no one waving their hands or speaking up. It is 6:28 p.m. I am going to put the meeting into adjournment. Thank you, one and all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, everybody. Good meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good night.